Hey there, my friend. It's Tricia Carr. Real quick before we head into this episode, I just want to make sure that you know about Modern Mystic Life, a subscription service for spiritual mentoring and education. The monthly subscription is only $11.11 per month. We have regular support and inspiration delivered with the utmost ease right into your text messenger 2 to 4 times per week. You can use your mobile device or your desktop messenger to access the lessons and meditations, a monthly MP3 download of a produced meditation, at least once per month live meditation led by me. There is no account login, and we have a monthly live class workshop. These are usually $35 for non-subscribers, so it is quite a deal. And the community is amazing. This is a way for you to support the Charmed Life podcast and also a way for us to be able to work more closely together. So do check out how you can subscribe in the show notes. I hope to see you there. Hello and welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, and the unconditional love of the universe, and I am your host. My name is Tricia Carr. I have been looking forward to this conscious conversation for a while as I saw the submission for this guest to come on the show and then the subsequent scheduling. It is medicine that I need, and I imagine if it isn't specifically for you, which I would be grateful that if you haven't experienced what this subject is in particular, but it might be for someone that you know. Well, I'll start right there that little bit of a tease before I introduce my very special guest. And before I do, I just want to mention that we have really exciting programs now coming up regularly with the Intuitive Healing Arts Academy. We have multidimensional mediumship, which is a 6-module. It's 6 modules, 6 meetings, 6, training sessions with all of the, as well as 6 modules of education. But it's just over 8 weeks so that you get a couple of gap weeks so you can integrate. The multidimensional mediumship program will give you the facilitation to be able to connect with the multiple dimensions of spirit, connecting with past loved ones, as well as angels, interdimensionals, and realms of nature. It is a really powerful program, and the community that you receive in such a container is so incredible. We have that coming up in the summer as well as in January. And then we have animal communication coming up one more time before 2024. So that's just a little tease, but we also have other intuitive development classes, development circles. We have some other programs coming up. So just a little bit of a nod there. And now let's get into this incredible, powerful conscious conversation with my guest, Dr. Tracy Kemble, Ph.D. Dr. Tracy is the author of Narc.tion.ar.y, which is the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Dictionary. Dr. Tracy is a thought leader, entrepreneur, and women's empowerment expert with over 30 years' experience in teaching life transformation. In 2022, Dr. Tracy was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Women's Leader Club for successfully building 3 sustainable international businesses, including Mrs. Globe, an international televised cultural event with over 80 licenses around the world, the WIN Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit specializing in abuse recovery, and the International Feminine Boss Academy and Society, a learning center where she teaches female soulpreneurs how to manifest their life with feminine energy. Wow, incredible. We talk about the person who tends to be in a relationship with a narcissistic abuser as the wounded empath. So much in this conversation. So I'm going to get you right into it, and I will chat with you on the other side. Here we go with Dr. Tracy Kemble. Dr. Tracy Kemble, I am so excited to have you on the show. And what you have to offer as a conversation is desperately needed. So thank you so much for coming on the program.
I'm so excited to be here. We have lots of great things to talk about just based on the few minutes we spent together.
I know it's one of the ones where it's like, wait, let's hit record. Wait. We'll probably find ourselves an hour later, but let's let everyone know about the amazing work that you're doing. Would you share with us your journey, your spiritual journey, your professional, and just the work that you're doing wherever you would like to start?
So I'll answer that two ways. First off, as I'm an Aquarian born on Valentine's Day, and so
Oh,
as a seeker of knowledge, I think that I arrived at this existence knowing that I was just missing some things,
mm,
and I had two very profound, on a spiritual level, I had two very profound spiritual experiences that opened me up to not having to do life alone, that there was a higher
mm,
source out there, a higher voice out there. So I've known that ever since I was a child. In the earthly sense, in the physical sense, I've been in the world of recovery for 30 years. I run a nonprofit that specializes in abuse recovery, which is why we're here today.
mm,
And I got into the world of trauma recovery because I had lived it myself.
yeah.
And so here I am 30 years later, and just still doing what I feel like is my higher calling and helping. I primarily work with women, helping
Mm,
women really be able to shed some of the traumatizing life experiences that keep them from being the best version of themselves. And I combine it through psychology and spirituality.
That's a beautiful, that's a sweet spot, sweet spot. We're
So
very,
fun.
and what's the difference anyway? It's like I remind people who are maybe opening their psychic gifts and they're like been conditioned to think that psychic is dumb or bad or scary, any of those things. And I'm like, look,
Not spiritual,
psych,
of the
yes, psych,
devil.
yeah, but the root psych is also in psychology and psychiatry for a reason. It's the same thing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Well, trauma recovery, I want to ask you right up front for those who are here, seeking a combination of all of that, and what do you observe, or what is your experience with people who are healers being wounded healers? Why or how do we make sense of that common um, that common phenomenon? It's maybe not a phenomenon if it's common, of people who are spiritual by their seeking or by their nature, and they tend to be healers and helpers, but they have trauma that they experience in their life. That's a pattern, it seems like. What do you think about all of that?
So I have a name for that,
Okay. Oh,
and
good.
I call that group of amazing people wounded empaths,
Yeah.
and it is such a confusing space because I used to be a wounded empath.
Mhm.
Because what happens is that on a spiritual level, you get, I call them my downloads. You get
Mhm.
downloads that, the way that I know that it was that they are downloads is because they are so much dang smarter than me. I mean, the
Right.
wisdom that suddenly will just come out of my mouth. I find myself grabbing a pen or, doing a playback. And that's how I know it's not me. It's not me.
Mm.
I don't have that, but I do have the gift to receive it and share it. And it's a very confusing place, I think, for many wounded empaths because we are highly spiritually gifted with information and we just get information downloaded into us. And then when some people look at us and they're like, but you're such a screw up yourself. How can you be
Mm.
giving this? Or the opposite, where they say, okay, but you've made this and this and this mistake. So, it's like they want you to be in one box or the other.
Yeah. Mhm.
And with wounded empaths, it is I believe it is our responsibility to fix the trauma wounds in us. I believe that we sign up for all of our life activities for the most part before we get here.
Yeah.
So I remember that along my journey. And now you know, I heard a great quote the other day. It said, a beautiful painting cannot be created unless you have contrast in the
Mhm.
colors. And our difficult times in life, our traumas in life, are those contrasts that make us even better healers on the other end.
Yes. Our wounds end up being our greatest resource. I mean, we could say they're our gifts, but they're definitely a resource, and it's beautiful.
It is. It's, I mean, I think that at minimum, what it does, when a person is in trauma or in pain, if you have walked those steps, you can have true empathy with that person, and you can really reach that person at their point of need. You can show up next to them and sit down next to them, and not with arrogance, but with complete empathy to say, I know, I get it. And that alone is a tremendous gift.
And the capacity also of having walked the path, if you've walked an arc of healing, then there's faith. You know what I mean? You're a living prayer for that person. You can hold that belief for them so that while they're in the weak stage, they can borrow your belief because you have walked the path, in
Exactly.
addition to the empathy. And you do work around abuse and abusive relationships, and particularly narcissism is one of the things we're here to talk about.
Exactly,
Let's
yes.
talk about this thing. Tell us the name of your book. I'm shy to try to pronounce it.
That's so funny. You're the second person today that said that.
Oh,
So my book is it's called Narctionary, and what it
Narctionary.
is,
Okay.
Narctionary. It's a dictionary
Mm-hmm.
geared all towards the world of narcissism, narcissistic abuse trauma, and narcissistic abuse recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And it has over 350 words and terms specifically to help somebody understand the many ghosts of narcissism, and to let them, just to give name to the chaos of narcissism.
Yeah. And covert narcissism is a big problem. It's so insidious. Can you explain that particular flavor of narcissism?
Okay, so let's just back up 2 seconds and let me give
Okay.
you a quick lesson on narcissism. So
Yes,
when
thank
we
you.
when we speak of narcissism, we're speaking not immediately about a personality disorder. Narcissism is something that we all have. In fact, we need what's called healthy narcissism, which is right here in front of us, in order for us to maintain our space in life. It allows us to keep the good in and push the bad out, right? No, you're not going to do that to my life. And I am thinking about myself consciously when I make that boundary, right? So that's healthy narcissism. Narcissism is a spectrum disorder. So it goes from here to here. In the middle is healthy narcissism. As it goes on up the scale, it's narcissistic characteristics, very difficult people. As it goes on up the scale, narcissistic personality disorder, problematic people. As we go on up the scale, it goes into antisocial personality disorder, sociopath, psychopath. Dangerous people, stay away from them. At the other end of the spectrum is something that is called self-love deficiency disorder. And my road to recovery took understanding at the opposite side of the narcissism is me. It's this person, this wounded empath, that because of trauma, I'm lacking in self-love. And that's why I believe self-love is a non-negotiable. It's the only antidote to narcissistic abuse recovery. Now, going back to your question, wait, I just went blank. Your question
Oh,
was?
I was like covert narcissism. Yeah.
Okay, so going back to your question, years ago, when people speak of narcissism, they would think of just the very grandiose narcissist where I'm so beautiful, I'm so wonderful, everybody should worship me, blah, blah, blah. Those are the type that we typically think of. Well, since then, there are about 8 different types of narcissism that now are being identified. And within that, there is a stream, let's call it a stream of narcissism, that's called the covert narcissist. And the covert narcissists are some of the most difficult narcissists to be around because they are truly the wolf in sheep's clothing. That a covert narcissist is somebody who is always the victim. The world is against them. They're controlling all environments because of the poor me. They will be very passive aggressive. They will act like they are sacrificing their life just for you. And so therefore, underlying that is, and so therefore you owe me your time, your money, your attention, your loyalty, whatever that demand is that they're putting on you. And it's a very tricky form of narcissism to identify.
And I've heard it called also, which I think helps to contextualize it, vulnerable narcissist, because they, the affect is I'm very vulnerable. And in fact, they use this sheep's clothing of vulnerability as a way to control. And yeah. And one of the things that a covert narcissist with whom I was in an abusive relationship, this person would be, I don't know how to do that, so you have to do it. That was one of the vulnerabilities. You're just, and the the gaslighting, the love bombing. You're so much better. So then eventually I'm doing everything in a partnership.
A classic form of a covert narcissist is exactly that, or or I'll put it in a different phrase. You are the perfect baby poop diaper changer. You're so good at that.
I couldn't
Right.
be. Oh wow, yeah. It's a form of love bombing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like that's classic covert narcissism, and I know that probably your listeners right now are like suddenly getting
Uh-oh.
images of people in their head, like, oh my God, I have somebody like that.
Yes, and so I had my mother married a person when I was 13. Yeah, and but he was more of of the demonstrative, like the obvious
The
narcissist,
grandiose.
grandiose. He was it's obvious to everyone, like we had a president in that of that characteristic if you're looking for an archetype. And so he was, yeah, he didn't do the vulnerable thing and he didn't do the covert thing, but I was groomed, pretty,
Yeah.
to be able to accept that kind of treatment. And then when I was in my 20s, I got into a relationship with another narcissist. And this one's kind of, I'm curious about the other types because this person did some of the covert things, but was also grandiose sometimes. So, and I know about a type called communal, and I've seen combinations of them too. I've seen a person who was both covert and communal. Can you talk to us? This is delicious. I didn't know there were 8 types. So you don't have to talk about all 8 of them if you don't want, but I'd love to hear.
Well, gosh, I can open my book
Sure,
so I don't
why
have to
not?
remember them
Got a
off my
dictionary right
brain.
there.
Exactly. All right. So there's the covert narcissist. There's AKA the vulnerable narcissist. There's the cerebral narcissist, and the
Mm,
cerebral narcissist is the narcissist who thinks that he or she is smarter
yeah.
than anyone. There's a grandiose narcissist. There is the altruistic narcissist, and those are the dangerous ones. Those are the ones that end up leading cults,
Oh.
and they say, I'm
Mhm.
doing this all in the name of love and all in the name of God.
And
And
there's a greater good kind of thing. You have to sacrifice yourself because of the greater good, but that only
yeah,
they have access to.
exactly. And one of the
Uh-huh.
things that I always say is when you enter into a narcissistic relationship, it's no different than being onboarded into a cult.
So
That
totally.
you are targeted
Mhm.
and you are preyed upon to be conditioned to becoming dependent and or in love with this person who begins to manipulate and control you for fuel
Mhm.
so that they can do what it is that they want in life. And you had mentioned something that I want to touch on for just a second. I'm asked many times, how did you get into this world of narcissism, and how did you find yourself so knee deep in pain and narcissism? Because mine's, was the big aha moments came in my adult life, but I was introduced to narcissism in my family environment. And so what happened to me is the personality types of narcissism had been normalized.
Yeah.
So I thought that this is just how people behave, that, people love you one day and despise you the next, that they compare all the other kids in the neighborhood that are so much better than, me and my own siblings. Isn't this normal? I thought that, this is what love looks like. And so for those who are out there who are saying like, how in the world did I end up here? There's a good chance that you may have slowly been, exposed to it as a childhood. And
Mhm.
because I always say that if I drew a picture of myself, I was that person who had my hands on the electric stove, and people would walk by when they would see what I would tolerate and be like, oh my God, doesn't that hurt? And I would be like, yeah. And they say, "Don't you want to remove it?" And because of my trauma, I would say, "Can I?"
May I? Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I
Hmm.
didn't know I had the right not to tolerate stuff like that.
Hmm. And even if it's not in the family, it could have been in peer group, it could have been teachers or other caregivers. Because I don't,
Absolutely.
how do people, and I mean, some people are wounded empaths, even if, or have self love deficiency, even if their family seemed on paper to be beautiful and perfect, which of course no one ever is. But there are other ways that we kind of become vulnerable to it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that any type of a trauma can
Hmm.
cause it. You know,
Yeah,
you could be
that's right.
raised in a family with a parent who, let's say that they suffered from depressive disorder,
Hmm.
and they were just always checked out with depression. I mean, that causes a trauma wound. That's a form of
Yeah.
neglect that you could suddenly find yourself as an adult suffering from abandonment syndrome, right? And all of those lead to when we have that vulnerability, we are a walking target
Hmm.
for a narcissist, a walking target, and they can smell us out
Yeah.
because of A, we're empaths and
Hmm.
we have something that they want, and B, a narcissist and a wounded empath are both sides, are opposite sides of the same coin.
Yep. Yeah. The polarity is magnetic, and yeah, with the person, it's interesting that you said it's like being inducted into a cult, because the person that I was in it's a relationship. It was technically supposed to be a romantic relationship, but there wasn't. It was platonic, functionally, for me. Meaning this person did whatever they wanted, and then it was. I call it now a cult of two. I was the follower, and that was the leader,
Yeah,
and it
it's a
very
good
much functioned
description.
like that. Hmm. Yeah.
Very good description.
And it functioned very much like that. And my husband now, he's very neutral on the codependent narcissistic scale. He doesn't really have much of either one of those. And fantastic. I'm so happy for myself that I attracted a healthy person in that regard. But it was funny. I hardly say it anymore because we've been together for almost 20 years now. But for a long time, when I would refer to that relationship or refer to that time when I was in my 20s, and I would say, oh, well, I wasn't allowed to do that, because and he was like, because he didn't know it, we met. Oh gosh, actually, it was only like 3 or 4 years after that relation I got out of that situation, but still, I did a lot of exponential healing. And yeah, he would say like, that is so weird. I don't even know who you're talking about. There's nothing that I think. There's nothing right now that you go, I'm not allowed to, as if someone can allow or disallow something,
Right.
for you. And I'm like,
It's at
that's what it
hand.
was like. Mm-hmm.
It's at hand. Can I? Can I?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that was very much what it was like. There's also the thing, I don't know if people know this. This is what I've noticed, that the narcissist is basically obsessed. I felt in all of these relationships that I've been in, three significant ones, I felt like there was an obsession about me, because in order to control me or to feed off of me, it felt like I didn't have any space. I didn't have my thoughts couldn't be my own. And in the two, as an adult, that I got out of, there was an opening that came because that person started to feed off of someone else, and then it made it easy for me to escape, even though I wasn't as healed as I would have been eventually. Can you speak to that feeling of being obsessed over by a narcissist? Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about?
I'm so glad that you worded it exactly as you did, because I think that's going to really resonate with a lot of people who can't put word to what
Yeah.
they're thinking and feeling. And it is true. What you're saying is exactly what happens. So in the narcissistic relationship, you have somebody who lacks emotion and feeling and empathy. And they understand that they're lacking that. So what happens is that they see these empaths, and especially the wounded empaths, where and like magnets, we're drawn to each other. So this person becomes enamored with you because they think that you are the next that super pill that can heal that hole in their soul. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, it depends on how far up
Yeah.
the spectrum they are, right? So this person becomes enamored with you. They love bomb you. They pedestalize you. Put you up on that pedestal. And the next thing you know, because of your own wounds, we buy into that, And the next thing you know, we're knee deep in this relationship, and slowly the manipulations and the controls happen. Well, what has happened to us on the other side is that you mentioned the word narcissistic conditioning, and those who are not familiar with narcissistic conditioning, what it is, it's a series of techniques that the narcissist uses to get the wounded empath to fall in love with them to a certain degree, even if it's a platonic, to just
Mhm.
to be able to get that person in their web, with the goal of keeping that person in their web as a primary fuel source.
Yeah.
And so the reason that we feel like we can't breathe is literally because they are keeping an eye on us 24 hours a day, with the great fear that we might leave because we have become their primary fuel source.
Yeah.
And so they have to keep us miserable enough, broken enough, or happy enough to stay. And that's why they can go from hurt to rescue, hurt to rescue. You said, that's it, I'm going to have enough. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't let this person go. They're not, I can't let this person go because I love them. No, no, no. I can't let this person go because they are my fuel source. And so
Mhm.
I have to do everything I can to get them back long enough to then I can start abusing them and breaking them down again because they
Mhm.
get fuel off of that as well.
Yeah. I imagine that the word love bomb sometimes, especially if it's not in a romantic relationship, it can be, it's kind of hard to take because if, when I think about the relationship that was platonic, I guess I didn't realize this person was love bombing me. But this person was at least on their best behavior. And I mean, in a way, I think that this person did see me, you know what I mean? And they were correct about me, the way they were love bombing me. You know what I mean? I am good at things, I'm capable. And I don't know. I think that the love bombing doesn't have to be something that is like gratifying your ego because you're so starved. You might have a self-love deficiency, but it could be that you just feel seen. And they tend to have, like you said, their techniques. At least their techniques are pretty intelligent. They can be pretty intelligent people, or at least have a lot of tools at their disposal.
The narcissist is not a stupid person.
Right. I
They
feel like
have,
all of them they have, I don't know, I guess there could be some that aren't so clever, but I've only met really, really smart ones.
yeah. And in order for them to survive, they study people.
Hmm.
They will study your speech pattern, and they will parrot you, and they will study your nuances and start taking on your nuances. And they literally study you to find out your weaknesses, your strengths, how they can get inside and start to break you down so that you won't leave. The
Hmm.
reason they break you down is not just to get fuel because they feel power when you cry, but it's also to make you feel so insecure that you will not move on, and therefore leaving them with a permanent fuel source.
Yeah. Explain that fuel source. I get it. But I feel like in case someone's like, what does she mean by fuel source? I get it. It's very vampiric. And I think that may be why I was always into vampire stories when I was younger and still as an adult, because somehow it's the vampire. I think the vampire lore is built on something like this, right? That's why we have that
Well,
spiritual
there is something
mythology.
called emotional vampire in
Mhm.
recovery that you have to learn. That's just
Mm.
a person that emotionally sucks all the energy out of you.
Yeah.
So imagine that a person with narcissism feels invisible.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what they do is and their emotional system is like, or their self visibility or their self esteem is like a cell phone battery. If it is not getting a constant charge and it begins to dip, they become very dangerous people.
Hmm.
So what they have learned to do out of survival is they have learned to find people that they can continue to activate either through praise and worship or degradation and destruction, to create emotion and attention and chaos and all these things that make them feel alive.
Hmm.
And so when we react to their shenanigans, call them abuses, I now call them shenanigans, we are fuel sourcing them,
Hmm.
right? We're building up that battery. And this is why a typical narcissist cannot have times of peace. They just cannot be at peace. They always have to be up to something, doing something, talking about someone, creating drama when there's no drama, creating fights over nothing. They because they need this constant reaction in order to get a shot of fuel.
Yeah. Yeah, drama. That is one thing since I exited the last, I'm going to call it last, not most recent, last abusive relationship with a narcissist. And I got free of it. And the contrast of, oh my gosh, my life is not dramatic. I was always embroiled in the dramas of that person. But when I'm on my own and with people that I cultivate in the healthy relationships, my life is pretty peaceful. But I had like a little PTSD because let's talk about that. There is a sense that maybe PTSD is too strong of a word because there are specific diagnostic applications for that. But thinking about, first of all, the drama that you're always embroiled in or that obsession. And when that's removed, there's this withdrawal that is a part of the healing process. But it's a pretty scary to go through.
So what you're talking about, and I'm so glad you brought it up. There
You can tell
is,
I've been in it, right? You're like,
you
she
bet, yeah,
knows it
you've
from
been
the
detailed.
inside.
Yeah, she's been there. She's eaten the candy, drank the Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
So in the world, I run a recovery program, and it's a
Okay.
year-long recovery program, and it has 6 modules in it.
Mm.
From what is this, what happened to me, we talk about the shenanigans. Well, the third one is loving the narcissist, and the fourth module is it's all about the number one trauma wound that comes from being in a narcissistic relationship. Many people have been treated for PTSD who have come out of a narcissistic relationship, but it doesn't always work because a person who is exposed to narcissistic abuse doesn't have PTSD. They have something that is called CPTSD
Oh, chronic. Complex?
and complex,
Complex.
and it's a different element of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest reason why this is important is because when somebody has PTSD, for example, that our family friend of ours was in the Las Vegas shootings,
Yeah.
and she, of course, has PTSD. But
Mm-hmm.
anytime her depression or her anxiety kicks up, she's able to stop and say, stop. On this day, at this time, I was at this activity and there were gunshots and I got hit by shrapnel. And because of this incident, I'm feeling this. So the recovery is more tangible. You can grab a
Mm-hmm.
hold of it because you're able to take yourself back to the original trauma, right? And start
Mm-hmm.
from there. Well, in narcissistic abuse, because there's so much mind manipulation going on and soul punching and soul stabbings going on, we have so many trauma wounds in us. And if a narcissist, if you go to therapy with a narcissist, and it happens so often, and the narcissist will look at the therapist and say, tell her to tell me exactly what I do wrong. Um, you tell me that I'm a really good at taking care of certain tasks.
You
Why?
want to. I thought you wanted to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And you start to feel crazy because there's so
Mm-hmm.
much manipulation. So there's a very specific way to heal from narcissistic abuse trauma, and it's the cousin of the PTSD, which is CPTSD. So it's real. What you're talking about is
Mm.
real, and it does take recovery. I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier, that you said, now that the narcissist is out of my life, I'm finding that I'm living in calm. Well, one thing that I discovered is that, as I said, that my exposure to narcissism happened in my family unit growing up, and it continued to just throughout my life, just doing normal and attracting narcissists into my life. So for many years in my life, I thought that and I was diagnosed with depression.
Mm.
And it was a battle for me to rise above that. But fast forward in my recovery, what I realized is I now refer to it as narcissistic induced depression.
Mm.
That what I found was that when I was away from the chronic war zone, of the narcissist, I'm not a depressed person.
Yeah.
I'm actually a quite positive person, but I was never able to experience that positivity because when I would get to feeling better, it was a threat to the narcissist. So the
Yeah.
narcissist would have to go in and do something to send me back on that chronic trip zone, which would cause me to chronically feel depressed. It was an awful cycle that I was in. But there are side effects of narcissism that can lead you to mental health issues.
And we will be right back. Hi, friend, it's Tricia Carr with an invitation for you if you are ready to accelerate your ascension and connect to the swift flow of your life mission. Mind Body Ascension Acceleration Coaching. All of my clinical training, my experience from teaching and providing countless sessions and classes, one-on-one, group coaching, healing, reading, teaching, channeling, as well as my calibration as a human design reflector. I'm offering all of this to you to step up your entire life, to accelerate your ascension walk. If you've had a single session with me, if you've had coaching, or if you've experienced transformation from any of my offerings, my classes, podcasts, videos, well, this is an accelerated and exponentially charged. This is what my soul has prepared for an eternity and up to now. And if you hear this call, then this is also co-created with your soul. Your life is meant to be joy first and a service as a close and integrated second. This coaching is especially tuned for high achievers who want to accelerate their progress on their life mission and create mind-body well-being and higher attunement. Submit to work with me in this powerful container, this premium coaching. If you feel the call, you can do it. I guide, you take action. I hold the resonant projection field, channel your steps, and you take action. The first action step is to fill out an application, the link to which you will find in the description. Be prepared, be ready to upgrade your mind-body ascension and your connection and flow with your spiritual mission. And now back to the show. Let's bring in the spiritual aspect, because I have been contemplating and asking Spirit, like, how does this happen? Like, what's going on metaphysically? What's going on spiritually? I'm thinking that there's like a parasite, kind of like a spiritual parasite attachment that happens. I don't know. What's going on metaphysically with
So,
this?
in my opinion, and again, I'm going to go back to my course because the third module is called Love and the Narcissist. And in the second module, we talk about all the outside things, all the physical and mental things that these guys or girls, what people do to us, and we receive it in the trauma wounds that happen from that. In my third module, it's called Love and the Narcissist, and this is where I dive inside, and I start answering or discovering, bringing up discussion about what was it about the narcissist that was attracted to me? What was it about me that I was attracted to the narcissist? Why, when all the warning signs said, no, don't run, I would turn and run back to this person as fast as I can? Why is it that even when they were away from them, I could feel their presence? Why is it that there were times when I would say, oh my God, what are they doing? And all of a sudden I would get a text from them. Why is that? Well, I believe that there is a spiritual bond that needs to be broken and untangled when you are ending a relationship that is as convoluted emotionally as we get with a narcissist. That the cover of my book, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's got all this tangled brain, right?
Oh, yeah.
and that's what I feel happens, is that we've been conditioned. And I really believe, to the core of my being, that we need to do our psychological work. We need to do our physical work. But in order to really break the abusive cycle and not to repeat it, we also have to do our spiritual work. That we have to go in and untether the strings that keep us connected to that person mentally. Part of those tethering strings are that this person has turned us into, I mean, we became a fuel source to somebody.
Yeah.
And after a while, we began to feel obligated. And in a backwards way, we have a purpose that comes out of that. And so this thing needs to be handled. You have to do all your physical work, your mental work, your emotional work, but you also have to do your spiritual work to untether yourself.
Yeah. I would love to hear more about how does the book function for people? How does your book work for them? And of course, the practicalities of your course, like when is it offered? How is it offered? But starting with the book, if you will, how do we use this incredible resource?
So this book came together very, very fast. And I'll tell you the story and then it will kind of answer that question. I was talking with a friend of mine, and I knew that she was in a narcissistic relationship for years. And after about 12 years, suddenly she got the great discard and he has a lot of money. And he came home and basically said, "Oh, by the way, we're done."
Hmm.
And the discard is what it's called. And she was completely devastated.
He found
And
another food source, I guess.
probably, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so she didn't know what to do. So she called me and she was saying like, "Tracy, I can't believe it that, out of the blue, he just left. He just dumped me." And I said, "Oh, that's called the discard." She goes, "What's the discard?" And I said, "The discard is when a narcissist has gained all the fuel that they can from you. They're bored with the fuel that you're giving them. They probably have found a new fuel source and they put you out like trash." She was,
Yeah.
"Oh my God." And she says, "Well, the most frustrating thing is any time that he for months now he's just been coming home and it's just these fights and I never know what we're fighting over." And I said, "Well, that's called a fight over nothing." "What's a fight over nothing?" Fight over nothing is literally a fight over nothing, in that all they're doing is they need fuel. So they will pick a fight and cause discord in the relationship simply to have power over you, to see you break down, so that you don't ask anything from them, so that you become needy in it all. And oh my gosh, she says, and then she says, "And the worst thing is that whenever we tried to talk about things, I would end up so confused afterwards by all the things that the narcissist was saying." And I said, "Oh, you were word saladed." I was,
Mhm.
"What?" That was a word salad. What's a word salad? A word salad is when the narcissist will convolute the conversation with so many words that it just spins up your head and you don't know which way is up and you get no resolution. And so she said, we did this, for 10 minutes. And finally she says, "Oh my gosh, Jesse, I wish that you would have a book where we could just read these terms and these phrases so that we understood what we were dealing with." And I literally picked up my phone because during my recovery, I had started a list because it was like, word salad, what's a word? And I couldn't remember, gaslighting, what's gaslighting? And, like I opened the book, like integrating behavior, what's that? Inner critic, individuation, like all these things. And so I just would write them down. So I put it all together alphabetically and created a book about it with a self-assessment test with, more. But the whole purpose of the book is my mother raised me with a great tool. And she said, "Tracy, when we are in pain and our pain doesn't have a name, it's like fighting a ghost, and that we can't grab a hold of it and bring it into our life and love it and mend it or push it out of our life if it doesn't best serve us. But when it has a name, we can grab a hold of it. We can
Yeah.
pull it close to us. We can mend it. We can heal it, or we can eliminate it from our life
Hmm.
if that's what best serves us." So that's how the book came about, is that the book gives name to 350 words and terms that deal with narcissism, narcissistic abuse trauma, and narcissistic abuse recovery, so that you can give name
Yeah.
to the term of what you're going through, and just giving it a name. Like, for example, just being able to say, "Okay, listen, you're word salading me. Stop it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Have a clear conversation." It's suddenly they can't get away with those shenanigans.
It's like naming the demon, in the Bible where Jesus said, "Tell me your name, demon." There's a reason why Jesus wanted the demon to tell his name. I think it's the same
Exactly.
thing. Yes. That's
Exactly.
brilliant. So that's so very helpful. There must be in there about the when they just create a narrative and then they just stick to it. It's like, basically telling it's a gaslighting kind of thing. And actually, I mean, I'll just go ahead and say it. Trump does this. Trump will they'll play a news clip and say, "You said this," and he goes, "Nope, that's fake news. I didn't say that." He like just changes the narrative and stays in it, like this delusion they create, and they expect you just by their bullying to align with it. That'll drive you crazy.
Yeah, so a crazy making is an after effect of the shenanigans of the narcissist. And one of the number one ways that a narcissist will do a handful of things that will make you feel crazy. They will word salad, they will blame shift, where
Hmm.
that's where,
Hmm.
you're trying to address something directly with them and suddenly they flip it around and you're defending yourself for something you did and you never talk about what's really at hand. And of course, there's gaslighting. And gaslighting, for those of you who are saying, what's gaslighting? Gaslighting is when, and it doesn't make sense with the word, so that's why I like to explain it. Gaslighting is when the narcissist they basically try to make you doubt your truth,
Yeah.
to make you feel crazy. And it comes from an old movie where it was called Gaslight,
Hmm.
and it was a man who was obviously a narcissist or a sociopath and was trying to make his then wife go crazy so he could get her money, and he would do that by flickering their gas lights in the house. And that was the hardest one for me to remember because I'm like, gaslight, what does a light have to do with crazy making, so that's what it is just yesterday I was talking to a client and they said how there was a big fight over nothing, and it happened to be with somebody who it had to do with a car and a registration and a smog check and everything of that nature, and it was a big family drama. And at the end, when everything got worked out, as it always will without the drama with the narcissist, the narcissist totally changed their story, and they're like, well, that was really great that the car got fixed, and whose idea was that? And the person responded, that was your idea. And the narcissist responded, no,
Yeah.
that wasn't my idea.
Yeah.
And literally, I got the note, I feel like I'm crazy. And I said, but that's what
Right.
they want. They
Right.
want. And so I have these little mantras that I do. And the mantra that I use a lot with narcissists that we all have to remember is this: just because they say it doesn't make it true.
Hmm.
And you just have to
And
hold on to that.
you don't have to
Just
negotiate with it
because
either.
no, just
You
because
can't.
they say it doesn't make it true.
Hmm.
Right. And one of the things that I was sharing just yesterday was we go crazy, and I went crazy for years when I was taking that strong personality of the narcissist, because it's a stronger personality.
Hmm.
I'm the empath. I don't need to be on stage. I There's enough going on up here and in here that I don't need the outside noise. Where narcissists tend to be very loud, except if they're giving you the silent treatment, right? So that strong takeover personality, that I was using that as my baseline of normal.
Hmm.
And when all of a sudden I had my epiphanic moment where I'm like, that's not normal.
Hmm.
And I cut that tie emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually. And I said, I am tired of trying, if we are standing on a floor like this, we're going to be off balance.
Hmm.
Believing that the narcissist way of life is the North Star, is the North Pole, you're never gonna have stability in your life.
Yeah.
You have to know, you have to create your own North Star. And that's why, a primary tool in the beginning is the mantra: just because they say it doesn't make it true. Just because they say it doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
And that is just such a beautiful mantra to send your heart, soul, and mind.
Mm. There is another person that I've seen on YouTube who talks a lot about narcissism, and I've heard the term gray rocking in
Hmm.
reference to, because you can't really, I mean, you can confront a narcissist, but there's no point. Are you still there?
I am.
Okay. I
Yeah,
thought I
we,
lost
we
you.
disappeared for a minute. I'm like, oh yeah, but okay, great, Rocket, I'm with you.
That you can confront a narcissist. Of course you can, but it doesn't usually, it's not fruitful. You'll just end up getting abused, and so tiptoeing backing out of it, and even like I don't know. That's what I've done in my. I mean, had to be confrontations because at some point, if they're not done with you and they're not ready to discard you, they will notice that you're leaving. But I tiptoe out of it in a way to get myself out of it with the least amount of abuse as possible, in the extinguished
And
burst of it.
that's a very smart move.
That's kind of what we have to. If they're not done with you, then you need to just as calmly as possible without any. There's no point in saying you're a narcissist. They rarely get themselves, unfortunately, they rarely get themselves to therapy because two reasons, three or four, five, I don't know, you could tell me. One reason, as I've learned, is that that narcissism can be egocentric, meaning it matches their personality, as opposed to some other, let's say, a more proper disorder like borderline personality disorder. A person, it's not in sync with their personality. They don't want to see themselves harming people in their lives. You know what I mean? The narcissist their personality adapts to it. So they just think it's everyone else's problem. And that's how they don't get to therapy because they never accept that truth. And so if they're not done with you, trying to confront them and negotiate with them and reason with them is usually only going to get yourself in an abusive conversation, right?
Correct.
So explain
Correct.
what gray rocking is. You're familiar
So
with it, right? Do you use that term,
yeah,
or
of
is there a
course I
better
am.
way?
Yes. No. Great. It's a technique.
Okay.
It's a target or a victim's one of their techniques that we need to hold on to our sanity.
Mm-hmm.
So what it is that you have to understand the dynamic the dynamic of narcissism, and where there's a person who's coming after you for fuel,
Mm-hmm.
and they are taking it from you, and the way that they come up and get fuel from you is by your reactions,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're
Mm-hmm.
crying, you're screaming, you're this, you're that. It's all about reaction. In the fifth module in my class, in my workshop, it's called When No Contact is Not an Option. And what this means is that ideally, in order to heal from narcissistic abuse trauma, is to get away from the person, is to get away and to get into recovery. Well, in reality, that's not always possible.
Yeah.
That you may be co-parenting. It may be a parent that we have just one set of parents when we come here, and you might want to maintain whatever you can of a relationship. It might be with a child. It might be you never a coworker.
Yeah.
You might not be able to completely escape the narcissist. So gray rocking is a way that when you speak to the narcissist, you respond with the personality of a gray rock.
Mm-hmm.
Which means, because, for example, if a narcissist says, "How are you?" They're not
They don't
asking,
care.
"How are you?" No, they're asking, "Is there anything in their life that I need to know about that I could perhaps use for my advantage later?" And so, what gray rocking is basically responding with no emotion, with one word answers.
Mm-hmm.
How are you? Fine. What's new? Not much. What's
Mm-hmm.
going on with your family? Everyone's good. Well, what's
Although,
happening at work with this situation? Same.
it's fine. I'll say there's sometimes I have responded like a black rock where it's like, okay, I love you, and I'll go, bye.
uh-huh. But that's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love you. That's so nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they don't
Happy
like it.
birthday. Oh,
They
yeah, they can feel it, but then they say if you maintain it and then the drama can't happen with you.
Yes, and they'll start to leave you alone.
Yeah.
When a narcissist, you see, I was saying in an interview earlier today, when we fall in love with another person, we're falling in love.
Mm-hmm.
When a narcissist falls in love, they're falling in fuel.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one to swallow when, you've given so much of your life to this other person, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And part of your power comes when you don't judge that person that they're that way. You just learn to accept it so you stop making your mistakes. So when they are if the way that they love or feel loved through us is to extract fuel, and you stop providing them that fuel, they're not going to fight for you. They will fight to try to get you to go back to your old ways so that they can
Mm-hmm.
get fuel.
Yeah.
But they're not fighting for you. And because the rule is fuel is to come easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
And wounded empaths give fuel easily. We love easy. We forgive easy. We have passion. We get hurt easy. This is just who we are. This is just our emotional DNA. So we're just like we're the jackpot of emotion for a narcissist. So what happens is that their rule of thumb is all fuel is to be easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when we become a difficult way to get fuel, well, they're going to get bored and move on.
Mm-hmm. They have to find it somewhere else.
They absolutely have to, because if not, they feel like they're going to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I felt like I was going to die in those well, especially two of them in particular.
Me too.
Really, in the one I was in my 20s, there was a point that I came to that was a wake up call just with me. And I heard myself saying, one of us has to die. And I didn't mean that aggressively. I wasn't going to hurt him or hurt myself. But then when I realized that, I was like, that's bad. That's not.
And can you imagine it? You say it, you don't think anything about it, and now one day you kind of have a retrospect on that, and you say, "What are those words coming out of my
Yeah.
mouth?
Yeah.
What am I saying?"
Yeah.
That's very narcissistic, sociopathic for me to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was wild. Well, actually, yes. Tell us about, how does your program run? How do people, is it a group program? When is it enroll? Is it all the time? Is it
Um,
passive? Yeah. What are the practicalities, the ins and outs, and how can people do it?
so this is my it's not even a labor of love, but
Mm,
it's my passion of love. I've been doing this for 30 years. It's a program it is called Reclaiming Me.
mhm.
And it is a comprehensive 1-year program. It meets twice a week. We have Wednesday night classes and Thursday night classes, different time zones. So the classes are different, available at different times. The first time a person attends, it's complimentary, and if they mention your show, that we'll definitely give them a free pass to attend.
Oh, great.
And then after that, it's only $10 a class. And the reason that, yeah,
That's so
the reason that I,
beautiful.
yeah, and the reason that I do that is because I, I when I was searching for my recovery, it was expensive and I was
Hmm.
alone. And so these are classes, they're positive, they're fun, they're confidential. Um, you can speak, you don't have to speak, but the way it works is that you show up. There's a class introductions. Everybody introduces themselves. We go and you have a little bit of a centering exercise. We go into a teaching. Then afterwards, we do a group. We call it Life Work for Home, a T tool, living to take our negative emotions and turn them into positive. And it meets once a week, and we have not missed a single class in 30 years.
Oh my goodness.
I have an amazing
Wow.
team, and we are just committed to helping women recover from narcissistic abuse trauma and be able to show up. At the other end of a wounded empath is an empowered
Yes.
empath who
Hmm.
can change and heal the world, and we need our empaths well. And so we are committed to not just getting people through the crisis, but then we even dive deep to say, okay, now what? Now what's next? Now
Hmm.
we can start to set into, that mission that you were born with, that you've always known you're meant to accomplish, that you have almost lost because you built an altar to the abuse. We're going to tear down that altar. We're going to
Yeah.
build an altar of your life to your life.
So you've been doing it for 30 years. Were you meeting in person at first
We
for
were,
a
we,
while?
we had for a
Yeah.
long while. We were
Hmm.
we were doing walk-in, and then when COVID happened, it was very traumatic for our group,
Yeah.
and so we
Mm.
had to regroup and get online. And then since we've been online, we've been able to offer classes in different time zones all over the
Yeah.
world, and and just we've grown exponentially since then.
Hmm.
And now we've been able to settle in. And my biggest concern was it's important to have that connection when you've been so isolated and embarrassed about what you've been going through. And so my concern was, how do we do this in a classroom? But it works. I mean, we've been doing it now since COVID, and the recovery is just as strong. And you can join it anytime. It's also available private online if you're not a group person, but I really recommend the groups because it just connects you better. And
Yeah.
when people are talking your language and you find your tribe, which is your tribe of recovery,
Yeah.
it helps in recovering faster.
Wow. I wish that I'd known about it when I needed it. I mean, I need it now still, so I'll probably be seeing you there. But I mean, like when I
I
was
love it.
when I was in my 20s, and and I didn't have the resources. The narcissist had sucked me dry and broken me down, and so
And it didn't
that's so
have a name
beautiful.
then.
No, right?
It
Yeah.
it I remember when I went into recovery for myself that I walked in and the therapist did what the therapist does is, why are you here?
Hmm.
And I said, because I feel invisible and that my brain is made of mush.
Hmm.
And that's the only way I could describe how I was. And it took a while and a few therapists for somebody to say, I think you might have narcissistic abuse trauma. And I'm like, what's
Hmm.
that? Well, they didn't call it narcissistic abuse trauma because it didn't have a name. But that's what it ended up being, was the narcissistic abuse trauma and CPTSD and
Hmm.
what I call narcissistic induced depression and anxiety and all the different
Yeah.
side effects that happen from it.
Hmm. Well, that's powerful. And last thing I just want to, because we talked about it before we got on, you're a channel. Tell us about your channeling. How does your
Oh my
channel work? We love
goodness.
it.
So I channel, I call it the Great Divine.
Yeah.
I have lived my life um, by principle of divine order that says the perfect solution is already in place as long as I align myself with it. And
Mhm.
so I've spent a lifetime really understanding how to align myself and open myself up. And the divine is the love voice that comes into me that just explains life and relationship and business, and it's just incredible. Like, for example, in my prayer and meditation time yesterday, um, I got this great download, and it was all about the difference between pushing people out of your life versus walking away.
Mhm.
And it came on the heels of somebody was saying, we even have the right to push our family out of our life if they're toxic. And I heard that and I said, yeah, but I got that feeling that, as an
Mhm.
empath that you get, I'm like, something's not right with this, something's not right with it. So the next day after that, I was in my prayer and meditation time, and all of a sudden this really clear message came through. And the message was, yes, you can push anybody out of your life that you want, but that's not a healing energy. That's an aggressive energy. That is close to the energy of the narcissist who discards people to say, you know what, you are out of my life. I am not speaking to you. I am, right? And they aggressively push people out of their life. And the divine says to me, the true act of love of self first, dignity, and honestly, love for mankind
Yeah.
is not to push people out of your life, but instead to do an inventory of yourself and say, when I am with this person, I don't show up as the best definition of self. When I am with this person, I lose my boundaries. When I am with this person, I start to
Mhm.
feel crazy. When I am with this person, I start to say mean things. I start to scream. I start to yell. I start to act in all the ways that I don't want to be. And as it was explained to me, that I have no control over the way people treat me,
Mhm.
right? And I have no control, even if I push that person out of my life, I have no control whether or not they're going to try to come back in. So the true act of self-love, and self-love is everything to me. It's a non-negotiable. As I say, my recovery slogan, self-love, my life slogan, self-love is a non-negotiable. The true act of self-love is to simply say, I need to remove myself from this person's existence because I don't show up as the best version of me. So therefore,
Mhm.
I step back. I don't need to tell them you're out of my life, you're this, you're that. No, I'm just stepping out, and I'm going to go to that place in my existence that I vibrate and behave as the best definition of self. no bridges burnt. Not necessary to burn bridges. Maybe that person will have an encounter with me later in life, but until I'm strong enough to handle their ways, I have to step back.
Yeah.
And so these are the beautiful things that the divine teaches me to be able to walk in self-love. That's really what she sends through to me, is how to walk in self-love and how to use that self-love in relationships and personal growth and in business.
That's wonderful. So very beautiful. Dr. Tracy, this has been incredibly valuable, and all the work that you're doing. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful for the work that you're doing on our beautiful world. So thank you so much for that. I hope I expect to be seeing you. I want to join that course.
Oh, please
I
do.
need
Please
it.
do.
Yes.
Yeah, I will. I show up and I'm there in the teachings and I show up at the turn of every module.
Okay.
But it's really good stuff and I would love to see you there. And of course, any of your
Wonderful.
guests that want to join, they can be our guest.
Yes, and of course, check the show notes to be able to get the Narc.tion.ar.y and also to find out about the course and every other way that you can connect with Dr. Tracy Kemble's work. This has been powerful. I thank you so very much for coming on the program.
I thank you. I thank you.
So good. I had to really control myself from keeping Dr. Tracy on for another hour because I could just bend her ear all day long. As I mentioned, I've been through this a few times, 3 very strong times that this has occurred in my existence, but I genuinely and truly feel as though it is behind me, that is the last time that I will be experiencing such of at least that, I mean, who knows, abuse can show up in your life, but at least a long-term narcissistic abuse relationship, I have a genuine sense that it is behind me, but I'm in the place where I'm grateful that I can use my insight to help my clients. So I'm super grateful for that. And I just always feel like I want to make sure, I did say it in the podcast when I'm talking about any of the relationships, none of them are my husband. My dear husband, whom I've been with now almost 20 years, I think. I said in the podcast, but it's just in case anyone missed it, he's somehow free of narcissism and codependency. It's just amazing. Now, he's not a perfect person, but in those areas, he's free of that spectrum. And I love it. So now, I don't know if you know this, but I do have still a YouTube channel. I say still because perhaps you started with my YouTube channel and then you wound up here or whatever. But I do have a YouTube channel, and I'm going to start posting some of these episodes because I record video of them. That's how we meet. And I took a break from recording them, or excuse me, putting them on YouTube, just because YouTube wasn't very amenable to having such videos, longer form videos. And so I just thought, well, let's just have people join the podcast. But YouTube has now added a podcast tab, implying that they are, they're not going to try to aggressively thwart in the algorithm a longer version of a video. So check it out there. I'll be posting some of the ones that I have done in the past. And I think that even if you listen to the podcast, to be able to watch it, it would be really cool. But having said that, I just recorded the introduction and the outro for the video version of it before I recorded this, the introduction and the outro of the podcast. And in it, I did feel the urge for a channeled message to come through. And so I'm going to go ahead and deliver that here, just that piece of it. And then with that, I'll just come right back and tell you goodbye. So here's that channeled message that came through spontaneously on the video for you. There are some who begin to question even as the channel called us from the nature realm. And in fact, we are of the realms of nature and your cosmos. We hold a space for you as the elven ones who see how things should flow and would grow upon your planet, including the beautiful humans, those of your race. We step forward because we would like to let you know that there is something to what it is that one offers as that wounded empath, or as that one who would enable something of this narcissistic characteristic. What is natural about what your intention is that you would take energies and transmute them and alchemize them, as well as being of service, as well as being able to feed those who you love. These are all natural and benevolent intentions that you have. This occurs in your nature. Look at your forest. Look at how it flourishes. Look at your gardens and see how there is an ebb and a flow and a give and a take. What has gone wrong is that there are no cycles in a relationship between an abuser and a giver. Thus, going to the well and pouring it and draining it of its resources, this is not meant to be. That is what is occurring in the relationship where there is abuse happening. As your hosts told you on this conversation, that there is a way for the empowerment to come for the one who is abused, the one who has had their well dried. This well is coming from the divine, and it is coming from the natural realms of spirit as well. So you can fulfill that well once again in the same manner that you were able to allow it to be drawn empty. So we want to give this to you as encouragement. We want to keep within you the beautiful, benevolent, and the healing intentions that you have as you are in such an experience. The experience that you were in was incorrect. Your intentions were correct. You were blindsided by the possibility that someone could take and take and take, taking advantage of your good and pleasure and pleasing intentions, your good and healing intentions. So we want to keep these and we want to foster these in you, and also give you the discernment and the wisdom of when it is time to cut it off for the good of the one and the other. You are a beautiful expression of nature in your pure form. And we encourage you to continue to love your heart, love your pure intentions, for they are superpowers and they are super strong in your nature. That's what I have for you in this episode. I do hope that if you found this useful, that you will share it with someone else. And I would love to invite you to check the show notes for my offerings as well as Dr. Tracy Kemble's. And of course, follow the show and leave a review. Leaving a review really, really helps me in so many ways. And it just I would appreciate it so much. So that's what I have for you in this episode. I hope it blessed you because you bless me. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.